Today, we're examining the alarming case of a young husband who died during what was first believed to be a tragic accident at a coastal resort. His wife, who police thought was home for the weekend, later emerged at the center of a mounting list of contradictions. What began as a routine review of hotel records soon revealed a trail of hidden movements, secret identities, and surveillance footage that shifted the investigation into far more disturbing territory. For 4 years, Ishan Meher and his wife Tanika lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Jersey City, surrounded by other young immigrant families who were building new lives in the United States. On paper, theirs looked like one of the more stable marriages in the neighborhood. They were both working, both contributing to the household, both sending money to their parents in Pune. Their routine was predictable: early mornings, busy days, quiet evenings. Nothing about their life suggested the kind of tension that would later become the center of a criminal investigation. Ishan worked as an IT consultant for a mid-sized technology firm. His job required frequent travel, usually described as short-term client deployments. These trips were never long, 2 or 3 days at a time, but they happened often enough that he was rarely home for an entire week. He kept a suitcase packed in the closet so he could leave quickly when the company emailed him late at night. From the outside, his travel made sense. Many consultants in the region lived the same way. But for Tanika, the pattern was becoming harder to ignore. Tanika ran a small catering service out of their apartment kitchen. She prepared orders for community events, birthday parties, and corporate lunches. Her schedule kept her busy, but most of her work happened at home. Nearly every day, she waited for Ishan to come in through the door, hoping they could share a meal or talk without rushing. As the months passed, those moments became rare. Some weeks, Ishan arrived just in time to sleep and left again before sunrise. Their families in India believed everything was fine. They heard the couple talk on speakerphone during festival calls. They saw photos of holiday meals and decorated living rooms. No one saw the arguments that started over finances. Tanika wanted to save more aggressively for a house. Ishan insisted they needed to keep sending regular support to both sets of parents. The arguments were not violent, but they were repetitive and unresolved. Every time they reached the same point, one of them walked away before anything was truly settled. Tanika noticed other changes. When they first moved to New Jersey, they spent holidays with friends from their temple and occasionally hosted dinners. But for the past year, those events had stopped. Even Diwali, which had once been a big celebration for them, felt forced. Tanika decorated alone. Ishan arrived late and stayed on his phone for most of the evening. He responded to messages quickly and sometimes stepped out of the room, closing the door behind him. When Tanika asked who needed him so urgently, he brushed the question aside. Small details added up. Ishan kept his phone screen tilted away from her. He cleared his call history more frequently. He claimed work was busier than ever, but some weeks the travel schedule did not match the workload Tanika knew he normally had. When she asked whether he was stressed or needed a break, he gave a short answer: everything was fine. Despite the growing distance, they continued presenting themselves as a functional couple. They attended 2 weddings that year, arriving together and smiling for photos. Their social media accounts showed weekend drives, coffee stops, and coordinated outfits during festivals. Friends commented on how well they looked together. None of them knew that inside the apartment, the atmosphere had shifted into something tense and uncertain. Explain the change to herself in practical terms. She believed maybe Ishan was overwhelmed with responsibilities or insecure about finances. Cultural expectations weighed heavily on them. Both sets of parents saw the couple as successful representatives of the family abroad. Ishan felt obligated to maintain that image. Tanika felt trapped in it. During late evenings, after finishing her orders, Tanika sometimes sat alone at the kitchen counter, replaying small incidents in her mind. The way he pulled his hand away when she touched him, the distracted look on his face during conversations, the way his eyes remained fixed on his phone even while she spoke. Nothing seemed dramatic on its own, but the overall picture was impossible to ignore. By the end of their 4th year in the United States, their marriage functioned more like a shared living arrangement than a partnership. They still slept under the same roof, still paid bills together, still spoke to their parents as a unit, but the sense of connection that once defined their relationship had been steadily eroding. To outsiders, nothing was wrong. To Tanika, everything had changed. She could not identify the exact moment the distance began, but she recognized that the emotional foundation of their marriage was no longer stable. And although she could not yet articulate it, the life they had built in Jersey City was heading toward a point of fracture, one that neither of them would be able to repair once events began to unfold. The first signs that something was wrong in the Meher household did not come from dramatic confrontations or sudden revelations. They appeared in small, almost invisible ways, details that most couples overlook until the pattern becomes too consistent to ignore. For Tanika, those early signals started with changes in how Ishan used his phone. He had never been secretive before, but over the past few months, he began deleting message threads as soon as he finished texting. When she walked into the room, he flipped the screen face down. If she asked who he was talking to, he responded with short phrases, "work stuff," or "just the client." On their shared credit card statement, new charges began to appear. These expenses were small individually, but suspicious when taken together. There were restaurant receipts from places they had never visited as a couple. One of them stood out immediately, a dinner bill from a seaside restaurant in Cape May. The timestamp showed it was charged on a night Ishan had insisted he was stuck at the office, handling a late server outage. Tanika knew those outages happened occasionally, but she also knew what the commute from his office looked like at that hour. A person working late usually returned drained, not evasive. When she brought it up, hoping for a reasonable explanation, Ishan brushed it aside. He did not deny dining there, he simply called it a client expense. The speed with which he dismissed the discrepancy struck her as calculated. There was no interest in clarifying the details, no effort to reassure her. He spoke as if he expected the conversation to end immediately. Tanika felt a shift in her stomach, the kind that signals something deeper than a simple misunderstanding. Soon after that, the weekend trips started. Ishan referred to them as urgent support visits for his consulting job. These trips were announced at the last minute, often late at night. He would pack quickly and leave early the next morning. Tanika accepted the first few without argument because his field sometimes required sudden travel. But the frequency increased to a level that didn't match any project he had ever described. And each trip seemed to follow the same pattern. No itinerary, no clear information about which client he was visiting, no follow-up stories afterward. Then came the earring. Tanika found it while washing Ishan's gym backpack, something she occasionally did when he left it in the laundry area. Inside the pocket was a small gold earring, delicate and clearly feminine. She checked her own collection first, hoping it might be one she had misplaced, but none of her earrings matched the design. She also knew she did not lend jewelry to anyone. The piece looked expensive, not the kind of item that accidentally ended up in someone's bag without meaning. Ishan was not home when she found it. She placed the earring on the counter and waited. When he returned and saw it, his reaction was not that of a confused man trying to understand how a stranger's earring got into his belongings. Instead, he gave a vague explanation. Maybe someone dropped it at the gym. Tanika recognized that response instantly. It was not an answer, it was a deflection. That night, after he went to sleep, she checked the email account he often left open on the shared laptop. One message caught her attention, an itinerary request from his company's travel system. It was incomplete, but it showed enough. The destination was not a client office. It was a resort hotel on the Jersey Shore, scheduled for the upcoming weekend. The email showed no corporate billing code, no project reference, nothing indicating legitimate business travel. Tanika sat staring at the screen, absorbing what the evidence suggested. Her earlier unease transformed into structured suspicion. The earring, the restaurant charge, the deleted messages, the sudden trips, and now the resort booking, each detail reinforced the same conclusion. Ishan was not traveling alone, and he was not traveling for work. She did not yet know who the other woman was. She did not yet know how long the relationship had been going on. But she understood that the pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. The first cracks in their marriage were no longer theoretical. They were visible, measurable, and pointing toward a truth she could no longer ignore. By the end of that week, Tanika stopped doubting her instincts. What she had once tried to explain away as stress or work pressure had revealed itself as something far more deliberate. Ishan was planning another trip, and this time she knew it would not be for business. On Friday morning, Ishan left the apartment just after sunrise. He carried the same suitcase he always used for work trips, rolling it toward the elevator with practiced ease. He repeated the familiar line about an urgent client deployment and said he expected to be back Sunday night. Tanika watched him go without responding. By that point, she no longer believed any part of his explanation. She waited 15 minutes, then left the apartment herself. She drove the same route he had taken toward the New Jersey Turnpike, keeping enough distance not to be noticed. She did not have a detailed plan. Her goal was simple: confirm where he was going and who he was meeting. Every clue from the previous weeks suggested this trip had nothing to do with work. The earring, the resort itinerary, and the unexplained restaurant charges had made that clear. Traffic was light that morning. Tanika kept her car 2 or 3 vehicles behind the gray rental sedan she recognized from their garage. Eventually, Ishan took the exit toward the Jersey Shore. She followed at a steady speed, staying far enough back that he never checked his mirrors long enough to detect her. The drive lasted a little over an hour. The closer she got to the coast, the more convinced she became that this was not a misunderstanding or a business errand. Shortly before noon, the Seaview Ridge Resort came into view. It was a well-known property in the area, used by companies for conferences and by couples for weekend stays. The hotel had a large entrance circle with valet service and several exterior cameras positioned for security. Tanika parked in a public lot across the street and walked to the resort on foot, blending in among the guests rolling weekend luggage behind them. Near the valet area, she saw the evidence she had been expecting, but still hoped she would not have to face. Ishan stepped out of the rental car, and a younger woman stepped out from the passenger side. Tanika recognized her almost immediately. It was Lavina Deshmukh, a former co-worker of Ishan's, someone he had mentioned once in passing as just part of the old project team. They spoke casually, laughed at something the valet said, and then walked side by side toward the lobby. The resort's exterior surveillance cameras captured that moment clearly. Both of them had their arms around each other. There was no attempt to hide the contact. Their body language showed a level of comfort that confirmed what Tanika had suspected for weeks. This trip was planned, intentional, and romantic. Tanika entered the lobby a few minutes after them. The lobby was spacious, with chandeliers, polished floors, and several cameras positioned above the check-in desks and elevators. She stayed near a group of conference attendees to avoid standing out. From that vantage point, she saw Ishan and Lavina waiting for the elevator. They were close enough that their shoulders touched. Lavina leaned toward him, and he responded by placing a hand on her back. They looked relaxed and unhurried, not like colleagues on a work trip. When the elevator doors opened, both stepped inside without noticing Tanika. That moment was also recorded on the hotel's security system. Later, during the investigation, detectives would recover that footage and treat it as critical evidence. Unsure of their room number, Tanika spent the next several hours in the public areas of the resort, observing without approaching them. In the afternoon, she saw them again, this time at the rooftop dining terrace. The rooftop had clear camera coverage, one near the bar, another near the entrance, and one pointed toward the rows of small tables. These cameras captured Ishan and Lavina sitting at a corner table, sharing cocktails and leaning close while talking. At one point, Lavina placed her hand over his, and he did not pull away. The footage showed both of them smiling, relaxed, and unaware that Tanika was on the opposite side of the terrace, partially hidden by a decorative wall. From her position, Tanika watched them for several minutes. The scene eliminated any remaining doubt. The secrecy, the travel, the evasive explanations, all of it pointed to a relationship that was no longer hidden. Any possibility of misunderstanding disappeared. The feeling was not shock anymore. She had suspected this outcome. What she experienced instead was a deep sense of humiliation, intensified by the fact that every moment was being recorded on the resort's cameras, preserved frame by frame. Tanika did not approach them or make a scene. She stayed silent, gathered what she had come to find, and left the terrace with a heavy, deliberate calm. She knew there would be no honest explanation from Ishan. If she wanted answers, she would have to confront him directly, and she was no longer willing to wait for him to come home with another fabricated story. By the time evening approached, the decision she carried was no longer shaped by suspicion. It was shaped by certainty. And that certainty was going to dictate what she did next. Saturday at the resort followed a predictable pattern for Ishan and Lavina. They spent most of the day on the property, moving between the pool area, the lounge, and the rooftop terrace. Tanika kept her distance and avoided any setting where a direct encounter could occur. Her focus remained on observing, not intervening. By evening, the couple headed to the resort's main restaurant for dinner. According to later statements provided by staff, they stayed for more than 2 hours, ordered multiple courses, and appeared relaxed and affectionate throughout the meal. At 10:42 p.m., resort security cameras recorded them stepping into the elevator that led to their floor. In the footage, they stood close together, speaking quietly. There was no sign that either expected anything unusual to happen that night. The cameras captured them exiting on the 8th floor and walking toward their suite. Lavina entered first. Ishan followed, leaving the hallway empty. Tanika had spent most of the evening tracking their movements from common areas and corridors. She did not approach them at any point, but she remained inside the building. She knew the layout by then and had identified less populated sections of the resort, including service corridors and a side terrace connected to the conference level. That terrace was usually empty at night. It had limited lighting, minimal foot traffic, and only one working camera positioned above the doorway. At 11:06 p.m., that same camera captured Ishan stepping outside alone. Investigators later confirmed he was taking a call from his brother in India. The audio was not recorded, but phone logs verified the conversation. The footage showed Ishan pacing slowly, holding his phone to his ear, glancing out toward the dark, open space beyond the railing. Less than a minute later, the same camera recorded another figure entering the terrace from a service hallway. The person wore a hood pulled low, head angled downward to obscure the face from direct view. Despite that, investigators later identified the figure as Tanika through her clothing, posture, and the route she had been captured taking on previous cameras. According to the footage, Tanika approached Ishan directly. He reacted with visible shock, stepping back slightly. Although the camera did not capture audio, investigators reconstructed the exchange from Tanika's later partial statements and the physical movements visible on screen. She confronted him about the trip and demanded an honest explanation. He attempted to move past her and end the encounter, making a motion consistent with pushing her away and saying something along the lines of "not here" or "stop this." The argument escalated quickly. Ishan tried to create distance between them, but Tanika followed, blocking his path back toward the conference hallway. The footage showed both of them gesturing sharply. At one point, Ishan raised his hands, not in aggression, but in a defensive posture, indicating he wanted the confrontation to stop. When he attempted again to leave, Tanika stepped forward and grabbed his wrist. This detail became one of the key findings in the investigative reconstruction. When Tanika grabbed him, Ishan pulled back with force, likely trying to free his arm. That sudden movement brought them closer to the terrace railing. The railing was structurally sound, but designed only as a barrier, not to withstand a heavy backward impact. In the next recorded sequence, Tanika pushed him. The action appeared abrupt, with more force than she likely intended. Investigators later classified it as a push delivered in anger and panic rather than premeditation. The camera caught Ishan stumbling backward, hitting the railing at an angle. The metal bar bent slightly under the impact. It did not break, but it flexed enough for Ishan to lose his balance and go over. He fell approximately 12 feet onto a concrete maintenance platform located below the terrace level. That area was normally accessed only by staff and had no safety carpeting or railings. The camera did not capture his landing, but it captured Tanika standing frozen for several seconds before turning and leaving through the same service hallway she had used earlier. Resort staff responded after a guest on a lower floor heard a noise and alerted security. Personnel reached Ishan quickly, but he was unresponsive. Emergency medical technicians pronounced him dead within minutes of their arrival. The initial incident report listed the cause as a possible accidental fall, noting that the terrace surface had patches of moisture from earlier weather and that lighting in the area was limited. At that moment, no one on site suspected foul play. The security footage had not yet been reviewed, and hotel staff assumed the fall was connected to poor visibility or a slip near the railing. For several hours, the incident remained categorized as a tragic accident on resort property, with no indication of the complex events that had led to the confrontation on the terrace. The morning after the fall, hotel management followed standard protocol for any death on the property. They secured the terrace area, notified local police, and began reviewing the surveillance system. At first, the focus was only on determining whether poor lighting or slick flooring contributed to the accident. Staff members believed Ishan had simply slipped while taking a phone call. But within hours, the footage started revealing information that contradicted the initial assumption. Security personnel began by checking hallway cameras near the couple's suite. As they scrubbed through the timeline, they noticed an unfamiliar woman moving through several floors of the hotel. She kept her hood up and avoided looking at any camera directly. Her movements were not consistent with a normal guest. She walked quickly, used service corridors when possible, and lingered near intersections where guest traffic was low. When officers asked the resort for a list of registered guests for the night, her face did not match any of the names. This detail became the first inconsistency. Officers had interviewed Lavina that morning, and she had explained that she and Ishan were staying alone for the weekend. She also stated that she did not recognize any other guests who might have interacted with them. Nothing in her early statement suggested that the unidentified woman could be connected to them. At 9:58 p.m., license plate recognition logs from the resort's parking garage recorded a vehicle belonging to Tanika Meher entering the facility. This contradicted her own statement to local officers. When police contacted her at home, Tanika told them she had been in Jersey City all weekend. She explained that she was shocked to learn of the accident and had no idea Ishan was traveling with someone. The timestamp in the garage logs proved otherwise. Her car was not only on the property, it had arrived more than an hour before the fall. Further review revealed another critical discovery. At 6:17 p.m., a guest check-in record showed a reservation under the name Tara Menon. The ID used matched the general appearance of Tanika, though the photo was slightly outdated. The signature on the registration form looked similar to hers. Investigators sent the form for handwriting analysis, and the results confirmed a match. The alias indicated an intentional attempt to hide her presence at the resort. When detectives continued scanning footage from the conference level, they located the crucial recording from the terrace camera. The angle was limited, but clear enough for investigators to see Tanika entering the terrace area moments before the confrontation. Her face was turned away from the lens, but the camera captured a partial profile and the pattern of her clothing. When the image was run through facial comparison software, it flagged her with a high match percentage. This confirmed that she had been on the terrace at the time of the incident, directly contradicting her alibi. Another piece of footage came from a camera mounted near the service dumpsters behind the resort. At 11:21 p.m., a hooded woman identified later as Tanika was recorded throwing away a pair of dark gloves. Security retrieved the trash from that container before collection. Inside, officers found a pair of gloves with small patches of dirt and a faint smell of metal consistent with the terrace railing. These were later tested for trace evidence. Although they did not contain definitive forensic proof, the timing and location made them significant. Digital forensics from traffic and phone records expanded the case further. Detectives pulled data from New Jersey toll systems and learned that Tanika's car had passed through 2 coastal toll points on Friday morning, matching the route from Jersey City to the resort. Cell tower analysis confirmed that her phone had been in the hotel vicinity all weekend, even though she had turned off location services. Additionally, data extracted from her phone showed she had taken a screenshot earlier that day, a still image from the hotel lobby camera feed showing Ishan and Lavina walking arm in arm. This screenshot was time-stamped several hours before the confrontation, proving she saw them together and had full knowledge of their relationship before entering the terrace. Each piece of evidence fit together into one clear conclusion. This was not a case of a guest accidentally falling from a terrace in poor lighting. It was a confrontation rooted in betrayal, captured across multiple security systems. The footage, digital records, and inconsistencies in Tanika's statements all pointed to the same finding. The fall resulted from a heated, physical altercation initiated by Tanika Meher. 3 days after the incident, detectives had gathered enough evidence to move forward with an arrest. Tanika Meher was taken into custody at her Jersey City apartment without resistance. Officers reported that she appeared calm but avoided answering direct questions. She was transported to the local precinct, where she was formally charged with second-degree manslaughter. Prosecutors stated that Tanika had traveled to the resort specifically to confront her husband and acted with reckless disregard for the danger created during that confrontation. Once charged, Tanika was held pending a detention hearing. Prosecutors emphasized the strength of the evidence, her car logs, the alias she used at check-in, the surveillance footage, and the timeline of her movements throughout the property. The judge ruled that she would remain in custody given the seriousness of the offense and the substantial evidence suggesting deliberate actions leading up to the confrontation. The case proceeded quickly to trial at the Superior Court of New Jersey. Jury selection focused on identifying individuals who could remain objective in a case involving marital conflict and a fatal confrontation. The trial lasted 4 weeks. From the opening statements, the prosecution built a clear, linear presentation of the events, supported by digital records and security footage. The most damaging evidence consisted of the resort's surveillance recordings. Jurors were shown the lobby footage first. Ishan and Lavina entering the building with their arms around each other, walking closely and appearing clearly involved. This clip confirmed motive and established that Tanika's claim of being unaware of any relationship was false. Next came the restaurant recordings. The rooftop terrace cameras captured Ishan and Lavina sharing cocktails, leaning toward each other and holding hands. Prosecutors explained that Tanika had seen this with her own eyes and later captured a screenshot of the same moment from a hotel display feed. This established that Tanika witnessed her husband's infidelity hours before the confrontation. Hallway footage was then presented. Cameras positioned near the elevators and service areas showed Tanika following the couple at a distance, using back corridors and monitoring their movements. Her hood remained up throughout the evening, suggesting an intent to avoid being recognized by staff or by the couple. Jurors saw her waiting near intersections and timing her actions to avoid passing directly in front of other guests. The terrace footage was the central piece. It showed Ishan stepping out to take a phone call, then Tanika entering from the service hallway. Although the footage had no audio, investigators testified that the gestures and physical movements were consistent with a verbal dispute. The critical moment, the push, was played repeatedly. Experts explained that the angle of the railing and the direction of Ishan's fall indicated an external force. The railing alone could not have caused a loss of balance unless he had been shoved backward. Forensic specialists presented findings on impact angles and the distance between the railing and the maintenance platform. They demonstrated why an accidental slip was unlikely. The trajectory of the fall was consistent with a sudden backward motion, not a gradual loss of balance caused by wet flooring. A structural engineering expert also testified that the terrace railing showed signs of flex consistent with a body being forcefully pushed against it. Digital evidence further solidified the prosecution's case. Toll booth records placed Tanika's car on the route to the resort. Phone tower data placed her near the hotel throughout the weekend. The screenshot on her phone confirmed that she had visually identified her husband with another woman before seeking him out on the terrace. The defense argued emotional distress and lack of intent, claiming the incident was a spontaneous reaction to betrayal. However, prosecutors emphasized that emotional reaction did not negate responsibility for reckless behavior that resulted in death. After deliberating for less than 2 days, the jury returned a guilty verdict for second-degree manslaughter. The judge reviewed impact statements from both families before issuing the sentence. In 2024, Tanika Meher was sentenced to 14 years in state prison. Under New Jersey's No Early Release Act, she is required to serve at least 85% of that term before parole eligibility, meaning she will spend nearly 12 years behind bars before her first review. Following the trial, Lavina Deshmukh moved out of New Jersey and declined all interview requests. Both families in India expressed disbelief that a marriage built on shared migration goals and professional ambitions ended with a fatal confrontation during a secret weekend trip. Investigators later remarked that without the extensive network of resort surveillance cameras, the true sequence of events might never have been uncovered.